You see, we talk about a barakah all the time, that divine multiplier, that unseen force that turns little into plenty, that gives rest in chaos, that puts sweetness in struggle, and that brings light in the darkest of nights. And yet, many of us complain our wealth is drained, our energy is gone, our homes are heavy, and our time slips away like sand through our fingers. The barakah feels missing, but the question isn't just where it went. The question is, what's blocking it? Let's not romanticize barakah without taking responsibility for what repels it. Because the truth is, barakah doesn't disappear randomly. It is often pushed away by our own choices, our own habits, our own blind spots. One of the biggest blockers is heedlessness of salah, not delaying it by 5 or 10 minutes. I'm talking about neglecting the conversation with the one who controls every aspect of your existence. You delay your meeting with him for the sake of a meeting with the creation. You ignore your obligation to the most generous and expect your time to be blessed. That delay, that laziness, it's not just about missing a prayer. It's about disconnecting from the source of barakah itself. Then comes breaking ties. You might have a falling out, a grudge, a cold silence that stretches for months. But what you don't realize is that cutting off family ties, refusing to forgive or reach out, closes the gates of blessings. Reconciliation isn't always about who was right. Sometimes it's about unblocking what your ego is blocking, healing the fracture so the flow of mercy can return. Another one, consuming haram. And I'm not just talking about food. I'm talking about your income, your contracts, your scrolls, your clicks, the phone in your hand, how you make money, what you watch, where your eyes land. Every haram you allow into your life is like throwing dirt into a stream, and then wondering why the water tastes bitter. You ask for barakah, but you poison its source. Neglecting the Quran, you open your phone before you open his book. Days, weeks go by without engaging with the very rope that connects the heavens to your soul. How can light enter your heart when you've turned off the switch? The Quran isn't just guidance, it's a source of barakah in your day, your home, your business, your speech. But if it's just decoration in your house, don't expect its fragrance to fill your life. Lying, even small lies, the lies we justify, the half-truths we tell to avoid awkwardness, the exaggerations to make ourselves look better, each one chips away at trust, and trust is a vessel for barakah. When truth is lost, so is blessing. It's that simple. Ingratitude. You're breathing, you're walking, you've eaten, you're sheltered, but all you see is what's missing. You compare, complain and curse your portion. And when you do that, you seal the door. Because the promise is clear. If you are grateful, I will surely increase you. Not being grateful isn't neutral, it's a blocker. Another is arrogance, thinking you deserve the barakah, thinking your success is from your own brilliance, that you've earned every inch of comfort, that you're above correction, above advice. Arrogance doesn't just repel people, it repels mercy, because the one who gives barakah is the one who loves humility. And when pride creeps in, barakah slips out. Wrong company. Who you surround yourself with shapes your mindset, your habits, your intentions. Sit with those who remind you of Allah, and you'll find barakah increasing even in silence. Sit with those who pull you into gossip, heedlessness or sin, and you'll find your joy disappearing and your peace vanishing. The energy of your circle either invites barakah or repels it. Cheating, in business, in exams, in relationships, thinking you can take shortcuts and still be blessed. You deceive others and expect truth to enter your life. You cut corners and expect your wealth to stretch. Cheating contaminates everything it touches, and no barakah can exist where trust has been broken for gain. Delayed repentance. You keep saying later, next Ramadan, when I'm older, when things settle down, and all the while the sins pile up and the barakah slips through the cracks. Every moment you delay turning back is a moment further from the source of all goodness. Tawbah is a magnet for barakah, but only when it's sincere, urgent and now. Finally, a hard heart, when nothing moves you, when reminders bounce off your soul, when tears don't come, when you see injustice and you scroll past, when someone shares truth and your ego resists. A hard heart is like dry soil. No matter how much rain falls, nothing grows. Softness is needed for barakah to land, to settle, to bloom. And softness comes from remembering who you are in front of who He is. These are not abstract ideas. These are daily choices. And when barakah seems absent, it's not always about what's missing, it's about what's in the way. Neglecting salah disconnects you from the source of all barakah. When a person turns away from prayer, they are not merely skipping a ritual, they are walking away from the very anchor that centers their soul. Salah is not a routine obligation, it is a lifeline. It's the thread that ties the creation to the Creator. It's the only direct line where no appointment is needed, no wait time exists, no reception issues occur. The moment you raise your hands and utter Allahu Akbar, you step into a sacred zone, a divine connection, a conversation with the one who owns your health, your wealth, your time, your opportunities, and your future. But when that connection is ignored, delayed or treated as a burden, a subtle corrosion begins, not on the outside, but on the inner workings of your life. There's something deeply spiritual that happens when you delay prayer. At first it feels like just 5 minutes, maybe you're finishing a task, taking a call, or running an errand. But those 5 minutes turn into a habit, and that habit turns into distance, and that distance becomes a numbness. What used to be the most powerful pause in your day, becomes the most avoided obligation. You start to convince yourself that Allah is forgiving, that He knows your heart, that you'll pray later. But what you're really doing is pulling yourself away from the source of light, from the fountain of barakah. You are choosing the urgency of the world over the timeless call of the divine. And the longer you delay, the more you forget what it feels like to be spiritually alive. You see, barakah isn't just about what you have, it's about what it feels like to have it. A person can have millions and feel bankrupt. Another can have little and feel full. The difference is often salah, not just the physical performance of it, but the presence within it. Salah recalibrates the heart. It washes the dust of the world off your soul. It reminds you who you are and where you're going. It creates stillness in chaos, clarity in confusion, and strength in weakness. But when it's missing, so is the anchor. And when the anchor is missing, everything starts to drift. Your thoughts, your priorities, your emotions, your decisions. Time starts to feel tighter. Money starts to feel insufficient. Energy starts to drain faster. You feel like you're doing everything, but nothing is flowing. That's not random. That's not just life being hard. That is what it feels like to operate without the light of salah. You are moving, but not being moved. You are working but not progressing. You are surviving but not thriving. Because the connection to the one who places barakah in your efforts is being neglected. And the more it is neglected, the more the barakah begins to shrink. You can't chase barakah while neglecting the very act that invites it. You can't ask for divine help while ignoring the divine invitation that comes 5 times a day. You can't crave peace while skipping the very moment designed to pour it into your heart. The prayer is not for Allah, it's for you. He doesn't need it. You do. You need the pause, the reset, the submission, the humility, the grounding. Without it, you start chasing the world with frantic energy, and the world responds with resistance. Things stop flowing, paths close, faces turn, peace becomes rare, and deep inside something begins to ache. Salah realigns everything. It doesn't remove problems, but it invites barakah into them. It doesn't erase pain, but it brings light to carry it. It doesn't cancel effort, but it blesses it. When a person truly honors their prayer, they find that Allah honors their needs. When they protect their prayer, they find that Allah protects their day. When they prioritize standing before their Lord, they find that creation begins to make space for them. They're no longer operating alone, they're operating with divine support. Think about the people who are most content, most peaceful, most aligned. They're not necessarily those with the most money, the highest status, or the easiest life. Often they are the ones whose foreheads are familiar with the ground, whose days are punctuated with prayer, whose connection to Allah is strong. It is in those moments of prayer that clarity descends, ideas form, fears dissolve, and hearts soften. So when salah is neglected, when it's pushed to the margins of your schedule, when it's rushed or treated as an afterthought, you're essentially closing the very window through which barakah enters your life. You are disconnecting from the most powerful source of balance, perspective, strength and blessing. Breaking family ties blocks the flow of divine mercy and blessings. The bonds of kinship are not just cultural obligations or sentimental connections, they are sacred. They are honored in the heavens before they are recognized on earth. The tie between you and your parents, your siblings, your uncles, aunts, cousins and extended relatives isn't random. It is divinely assigned, and every one of those ties comes with a responsibility, a test, and a chance for reward. But when a person chooses to sever those ties, out of pride, anger, jealousy or ego, they are doing more than just distancing themselves from another human being. They are cutting off a rope that connects them to divine barakah. It's easy to justify the break. They wronged me, they never call, they don't deserve my time. But that's not the question. The question isn't what they did, the question is what you're doing. Because the standard for maintaining ties isn't reciprocity, it's responsibility. You're not rewarded for responding to kindness with kindness. You're elevated when you respond to harm with patience, to silence with outreach, to coldness with warmth. And that elevation brings with it the rain of barakah. But when those ties are cut, especially deliberately, stubbornly, and permanently, there is a spiritual consequence that settles into a person's life, even if it's invisible at first. Things start to feel stagnant, efforts bear little fruit, the heart becomes harder. Relationships outside the family begin to struggle. There is a heaviness that creeps into the home, into the finances, into the mood of the heart. Because you're holding back mercy from others, and mercy begins to be withheld from you. The angels record your silence, not just your speech. They record your turning away, not just your outreach. And in that silence, barakah begins to fade, not out of punishment, but out of spiritual cause and effect. Just as a plant withers without water, the soul withers when it refuses to give what Allah has commanded it to give. Sometimes it's a small gesture that begins the restoration, a text, a phone call, a visit, a gift, a prayer. And in that gesture, something shifts. The heavens respond. Your heart softens. Theirs might not, but yours does. And that's enough to reignite the divine flow of blessings, because even if the other person doesn't change, your status in the sight of Allah has. And when He sees your humility, your effort, your willingness to push through the discomfort, He rewards you not just spiritually but practically. Your days feel lighter, your work becomes more fruitful, your du'as feel more heard, your peace returns. Family ties are not always easy. In fact, they often come with the most difficult tests, old wounds, misunderstandings, accusations, betrayals, but they are also the relationships that matter most in the divine record. You don't choose your family, and that's the point. You don't earn barakah by loving those who are easy to love. You earn it by maintaining bonds with those who test your patience, your forgiveness, your sincerity. And when you do, you align yourself with the qualities that bring divine love, mercy, patience, forgiveness, generosity. There are countless stories of people who lived in struggle until they repaired a broken tie. A son who finally spoke to his estranged father. A sister who visited her brother after years of silence. A daughter who forgave her mother. And suddenly doors opened. Opportunities arrived. A burden lifted. Not because the people changed, but because the heart did. And when the heart changes, it invites divine favor. And when divine favor comes, barakah floods every area of life. One of the most dangerous traps of shaitan is convincing a person that they are right to cut off a family member. He wraps their ego in righteousness. He reminds them of every wrong ever done. He fuels the story of victimhood, and slowly the person begins to feel justified in their distance. They believe silence is strength, but what they're really doing is isolating themselves from one of the greatest sources of divine mercy. They are replacing healing with bitterness, connection with pride, and barakah with drought. And the tragedy is that it doesn't just affect them, it ripples into their children, their household, their own future relationships. You cannot ask for barakah while holding a grudge against someone you're commanded to love. You cannot recite verses about mercy while practicing cruelty. You cannot beg for Allah's nearness while building walls between yourself and your kin. The two paths don't merge. Either you soften and receive the mercy that comes with it, or you harden and watch the blessings recede. And often the only thing standing between you and the peace you're craving is one simple act of humility that repairs what has been broken for far too long. Consuming haram in any form poisons the channels through which barakah flows. It doesn't just affect your body, it impacts your soul, your provision, your time, your family, your dua, and the peace that rests in your life. What you allow into your system becomes part of your being. If what enters is impure, deceptive, or earned through impermissible means, it settles into your actions, your mindset, and your outcomes. A person may strive day and night, working long hours, making deals, growing businesses, or pursuing success, yet find that everything still feels empty, unstable, or constantly slipping through their fingers. It's not about the amount, it's about the source. And when that source is tainted, so is the result. Haram consumption goes beyond just eating what is forbidden. It includes your income, your contracts, your work environment, your side hustles, your cliques, your dealings, your financial choices. It's in the corner cutting, the lies in the resume, the manipulation in the sales pitch, the silent approval of unethical practices, the shady investments, and the apps that funnel revenue through immoral means. You may think it's just a detail, just a one-time thing, but spiritually it's much deeper. Every morsel you put in your mouth that was earned unjustly becomes a barrier between you and divine favor. It's not just food, it's spiritual weight. It clouds your clarity, hardens the heart, and dims the light that guides your intuition and peace. You might notice that your time feels cursed. You work tirelessly and still fall behind. You earn money, and yet it disappears without blessing. You feel fatigue with no clear reason, disconnection from your prayers, and restlessness in your sleep. There is a constant chase with no satisfaction, and you begin to wonder if this is just how life is. But often, it's the haram consumption that has contaminated the vessel of your life. It's like trying to pour clean water into a cup that hasn't been washed. No matter how pure the water, the residue in the cup changes everything. Even in dua, the effects of haram are profound. You raise your hands, you plead, you cry, and yet there is silence. The heavens feel far, the response delayed, not because Allah doesn't hear you, He always hears, but because the fuel that feeds the dua is weakened. The Prophet ﷺ warned us of the man who travels far, disheveled and desperate, raising his hands in supplication, yet his food is haram, his drink is haram, his clothing is haram, and so how can he be answered? That's not rejection, it's a reminder that spiritual cleanliness is essential when calling upon the most pure. Even your relationships begin to reflect the state of what you consume. There's more friction, less compassion, more material stress, and less emotional safety. Children start mirroring the energy they absorb. Homes start to lose their tranquility, and suddenly, everything becomes a burden. It feels like life is running on empty. But the problem isn't always outside. Sometimes, it's in the wallet, in the shopping decisions, in the clicks that generate income, in the contracts we don't question, because everyone else is doing it. But the standard of the believer is not everyone else. It's is this pleasing to Allah? There is a deep spiritual dignity in purity of income, even if it's small, even if it's humble, even if it means refusing lucrative offers that compromise values. That sacrifice brings barakah in ways that can't be measured in numbers.
A few halal coins stretch farther than mountains of wealth earned through impermissible means. That's the mystery of barakah. It's not visible, but it's undeniable. And when you clean your income, your food, your dealings, you start to feel that mysterious support. Things work out, needs are met, contentment settles, your home becomes lighter, your heart more tranquil, your conversations more sincere. You feel that you are operating in divine alignment. And even if you didn't know before, even if the past was filled with questionable choices, the moment you make a conscious turn, the doors begin to open. The repentance itself invites barakah, the decision to shift, to cleanse, to ask, is this halal, before every transaction, and every bite, becomes a magnet for divine help, because the one who provides is not limited in what he can give you. He's only waiting to see that you want it in the right way. And once you make that decision, once you begin to purify what you allow into your life, you'll start noticing a transformation, not just in your wealth, but in your time, your energy, your emotions, your worship, and your relationships. Ignoring the Quran deprives your life of the light and guidance that attracts barakah. The Quran is not simply a book to be read during Ramadan, or placed on a high shelf as decoration in a home. It is a manual, a map, a healing and a living miracle that was revealed to transform hearts, guide decisions, purify intentions, and elevate the soul above the noise of this world. When a person neglects the Quran, they are not just missing out on information, they are starving their spirit of the very nourishment it needs to thrive. You can feed your body 3 times a day, drink water,